I've seen conversations between cheating spouses talking to their mistress saying that they just have to wait out this house thing and that they are stuck in this situation. I've literally seen the message where they are saying, I have to do this for the house.
Maybe the crux of the issue is, are we moving fast enough? Especially if you're outside the system.
Sometimes people are just not ready to make that decision. But because they want to plan ahead, feel like they have this deadline that they want to meet, they just apply anyways. That's one source of demand I think that is false and wouldn't be there if it wasn't for our current system.
We don't expect the system to hand carry us through everything and through every journey of our life and to help us make decisions on, for example, what marriage means.
Hi, I'm Nigel. I'm an assistant editor at Mothership. I just moved into my BTO with my wife about last week, so we're kind of liking it so far, and I guess I'm here to talk about the housing system.
That's great. Hi everyone, I'm Syah. I make content for Mothership. I just got married earlier this year, and my husband and I, we applied for BTO twice, and both times we failed.
Hey everybody, I'm Drew. I hang out at Mothership on the weekdays. Me and my partner, we applied for a BTO earlier this year, and actually we're going in tomorrow to pick our flat.
Okay, welcome back to Season 2 of Bottlespin Debates. So here we discuss social political topics in the form of a gamified debate. So today we have a very special guest with us today. She is a DJ / MC / content creator / online personality, the true multi-hyphenate. It's quite crazy the amount of things that you do. Please welcome Chow Jia Hui!
Hi.
Yay!
What's up? That's very sweet of you. Thank you. So yes, thank you so much for that introduction. I am a radio presenter and content creator, and I feel like you have to do everything now. That's just kind of what it takes to be in social media or in the media industry. But I really love what I do, and I'm very thankful for opportunities that I get, such as being here with you guys to talk about this heavy topic. I thought y'all would just always talk about heavy topics, but I guess today is like extra heavy.
This isn't the heaviest thing we've talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, actually we've talked about heavier stuff.
I think it could get a little heavy, especially from my perspective when it comes to my experience with HDB, because I had actually bought a resale flat before, and eventually I forfeited the entire flat after staying there for a couple of months with my partner, my then partner, when we realized that we didn't see a future with each other anymore. And I learned that this is quite a typical storyline for a lot of Singaporeans, and it also made me wonder very deeply about how exactly our policies with housing and with the HDB system will influence our behaviors in romance and relationships. So I think that is something that I learned along the way. Yeah, but that's my experience with HDB. I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, right, do feel that HDB is a very solid system, but I also recognize that...
Whoa, we're giving away the game before we even start.
Sorry.
Yeah,
no, I mean, for real, it's like, I really appreciate smart policies, and I think that the housing policies in Singapore were done very well.
Yeah. So I think, like, as you've heard, we all kind of have some experience with the public housing system. I think it's a topic that probably strikes a chord with many, or maybe even a nerve, depending on your experience with it. You know, as Chow kind of alluded to, you addressed it in like a video that you posted on your YouTube page.
Correct. Maybe just a bit about that video. It was after... I posted that video about maybe 8 months after moving out. So I had already gone through all the process of forfeiting the flat, and I understood what I needed to do to kind of let the flat go already and return it back to HDB. But the reason and the real motivation for putting that video out was actually because while I was in the process of trying to figure out how to let go of this flat that I've got after thinking that I was going to marry somebody and then realizing that this is not what I wanted in my life, I wanted to figure out what I needed to do. And I think a very practical and important question in my head was, how much money am I going to lose? And there were no answers at all, which made sense because HDB is not going to give you a handbook on how to break up with your partner and forfeit your house, right? Because it's anti-family and HDB is built for families. And after I experienced it, I realized that I'm just going to record as much or share as much of this experience with people as possible. Because when I was trying to figure it out, it was so hard and I was struggling, and it was a big low in my life. It was a very difficult position to wiggle out of and to navigate. So I thought that I'm just going to put this video out there. Whoever can benefit from it, sure, that'll be great. Turns out that video resonated with a lot more people than I expected. The number of emails, messages, DMs that I received after posting that video up was crazy. I think it was even like 1,000 over people just emailing, messaging, and sending their whole life stories to me, telling me about how they had to go through similar experiences and how hard it was for them. And a lot of them actually talked about it from a very emotional perspective, where they shared about how painful it was and how they fell into this decision in the first place. And it was quite heartbreaking, honestly. So I'm glad that it resonated with a lot of, well, okay, I'm not particularly glad that it resonated with people, but I'm glad that the video helped to shed light on this issue and to normalize it a bit, because no one's going to tell you the gloomy dark sides about their lives. Like, social media is rainbows and butterflies. Like, it's people showing the best parts of themselves. I think with this video, I just wanted to share useful information, and it turned out to be a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, housing itself is like a perennial issue in Singapore, right? It's something that people always want to talk about, or something that people always have an opinion about. Today, like you mentioned, we're going to specifically talk about the effect that the housing system has on love, relationships, and family. It might be a softer thing to talk about rather than like the stuff to do with pricing, demand and supply.
Economics.
We're not going to go into the economics of it. But we think that it has, practical considerations for things like settling down and getting a home in Singapore. So Chow, you shared a bit about your experience with the public housing system. We've shared like snippets, but maybe let's talk a bit more. Syah, you seem pretty jaded. What's your journey with the public housing system been like so far?
Thanks, Drew.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Yeah, okay, so my husband and I, we did apply for BTO twice and we didn't get it both times. So the very first time when we applied, it was at Tampines because we wanted to be close to my mom, my family. The queue number that we got was like really, really at the end, like it was higher than the number of flats. So we already kind of knew that, okay, we might not get it. And yeah, we didn't get it. So the second time we tried, somewhere in the central area, we didn't even get a queue number. So yeah. So right now the situation is, I think after we failed those 2 times, my husband and I mean, back then we weren't even engaged or married yet, but we kind of like sat down and talked and discussed and said, is it necessary for us to do it now? Because we were very young. And back then my husband was still in NS also. So we were like, you know what? It's not like we have an urgent need to get that house ASAP. Because right now the situation is, my husband and I were living with my mom in her place during weekdays, and then weekends we are living with his parents. And we have roofs over our heads and we love our family. We are okay with living with our family. And it's like a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're just, right now we are taking our time to slowly look at other options, considering resale as well, and just slowly planning it out.
Yeah, that's a nice arrangement.
Okay, Nigel, you've benefited a lot from the public housing system. I think it's fair to say.
The true
What's your
success
experience?
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's start at the start. My wife and I, we applied for the first time, I think quite early in our relationship. This was, I think, 2018 or 2019. We wanted to try for a 5-room flat in Canberra. The thinking was it's close to my parents who live in Woodlands. Yeah, we didn't get it. Didn't get a queue number. We were surprised because I thought like demand wouldn't be too high. The MRT wasn't built yet. And Canberra's not super connected.
5-room flats are normally pretty popular, right? Is that correct?
True. That's true.
Okay.
So we were kind of like hedging our bets between the popularity of the 5-room and Canberra being not that developed back then. So didn't get a queue number. The second try, we decided go big or go home. So we applied for Boon King and we got it.
So you stay like right here.
Yeah, just like 10 minutes down the road.
Wow.
You can see his house from our office.
Yes, if you go to the room at the
Super
side.
lucky.
Yeah, really lucky. I didn't choose the location because of the office, but it helps. Definitely helps.
So my own experience, I guess, me and my partner applied maybe about just over a year into our relationship. We, just saw the launch coming up and we're pretty serious. So we thought like, why not just try and see what happens? Yeah, very, very serious, I guess. So we thought, why not just try? We applied for the Tanjong Rhu project, and then we got a queue number. It's not a high queue number. It's towards the end, but it's within the number of flats they have. So we're going in tomorrow to pick a unit. And then after that, I guess we have no choice. We have to get married, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so Bottlespin Debates is about a debate. So we do have to say what the debate topic is, or the debate statement, I suppose. For today, it will be Singapore's public housing system is for the greater good of couples.
Yeah. And, obviously, as you guys have heard, we all have varied experiences, in relation to the public housing system. So kind of interested to know who will be on which side actually, and arguing like which points. But because Chow, you are our guest here today, you have the special privilege of picking a side. So which side do you want?
I mean, I guess I will naturally have to. I mean, I do see how it benefits, but for this debate, I'm gonna sit on the camp of no.
No, okay.
So Chow will be arguing against the debate statement. So, as our guest today, I think it kind of actually makes sense. Actually, I low-key want to be in her team also.
Wait, for real? Then you just join.
I
Why?
can't. No.
Oh.
See my producer looking
Yeah,
at me.
we gotta spin the bottle.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I think just before we spin, I actually have a question for you, Chow. You were talking about your YouTube video and why you posted it.
Yep.
I'm curious to know what were some of the other reactions that you remember getting,
Oof.
besides people who were writing to you
Yep.
saying they resonated
Yep.
and all.
There was a lot
Yeah.
of criticism straight up for why I rushed. And I think a lot of people didn't understand the urgency of wanting to put a roof over my head. And if you don't understand that feeling, then good for you. Like you have a nice place to stay, you enjoy and you can live comfortably. That's great for you. But not everybody starts from the same place. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that we all have different positions that we begin in. And I think that was one of the major feedback that I got. A lot of people criticizing, saying that I rushed it, that I shouldn't have bought a house before getting married, or I shouldn't have bought a house before getting engaged, doing the ROM and whatnot. So I think majorly just two sentiments, one of resonance and the other of criticism.
It's almost like you ought to have known better
Yeah,
kind of thing.
a lot of that.
Okay, so now I think it's time to spin the bottle. So
Okay.
Chow, you can do the honors.
I will
So
do that.
whoever the bottle lands on, they will be in your team.
Okay.
Okay. It's a glass
Okay.
bottle, so just low-key be careful.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. All right.
Wait, what was the side you picked again?
We are against.
Against.
Yes.
Oh,
We are
okay.
against.
Okay.
You sound disappointed.
No, normally the side that I get picked for is like the unpopular side. But I don't know what's unpopular or popular for this topic, to be honest.
Yeah, it depends on how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chow has spinned the bottle. So a recap, Chow and Drew, they are going to argue against the debate statement. So they're going to be arguing that Singapore's public housing system is not for the greater good of couples. On the other side, me and Nigel, we are going to argue for the debate statement. So we're arguing that the public housing system is for the greater good of couples.
Before we give our opening statements, just a gentle reminder, I think it's worth saying every episode that the views expressed in this podcast do not represent the views of Mothership, and sometimes, most of the time, they do not necessarily even represent our own views. We are just presenting a debate for fun and to keep you guys entertained and informed, I suppose.
Yes, so I will be giving the opening statement for the four teams. So we agree that Singapore's public housing system is for the greater good of couples. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail yet because we will do so during our argument itself. But essentially, the points we are going to cover, firstly, the public housing system actually meets the needs of couples the most. And we will elaborate more, but I think most obviously is the type of grants and the amount of grants that are given to couples as compared to the others. Our second point is that the system, right, the public housing system actually strongly encourages couples to think long-term and plan ahead and plan early. I think it's something important for every single couple to do. And our last point is that our public housing system also encourages couples to actually work out their problems if they face any issues and stay together.
Yeah, so Chow and I will be arguing against the statement Singapore's public housing system is for the greater good of couples. We're against that. Let me begin by saying that I'm a chill guy. And as a chill guy, the thing that I hate the most is pressure. I feel like many Singaporeans can resonate with that as well. They don't like pressure. Nobody likes pressure. Who likes pressure? The thing about the public housing system is that it creates pressure for couples to commit early, oftentimes before that couple is either emotionally or even financially ready. The thing that this does is it creates a rush for couples to get a house, and that artificially creates demand, which in turn increases the price, making it harder for everyone, every couple in Singapore. Speaking of everyone though, it's not everyone, is it? Because the public housing system also excludes non-traditional couples. It's only open to married heterosexual couples or singles over 35. So that's basically what we'll be arguing.
Yeah, we will start with our first point. So our first point is that the public housing system in Singapore meets the needs of couples the most. And let's talk about grants, okay? So for the BTO system, right, the grants that are given to couples, firstly is the Enhanced CPF Housing Grant, EHG. And couples who are first-time applicants, they can actually use that grant for up to 120K. And this was an increase, because previously it was 80K, but starting, I think, mid this year, slightly to late this year, then it started to increase. And besides this grant, there's also the, what is it called?
What is it called?
There is the EHG for singles. So what this means is that if the couple includes a first-time applicant and then a second-time applicant, they can still receive grant under the EHG of up to 60K. And then let's talk about resale, grants for couples specifically. So you can get a family grant, the CPF housing grant, of up to 80K. The EHG, once again, same thing, up to 120K for first-timers. And then the proximity grant. So if a couple is living with their parents, for example, they can get 30K grant. Or if they are living within 4 kilometers of their parents, then they will get 20K grant.
Yeah, I think grants relate to affordability, but then there's also priority schemes, which relates to accessibility, right? If you're a couple, you want to live near your parents, you actually get priority. If you're a couple, you're planning a family, you have a kid on the way, you get priority over every other class of applicant. And so that just makes sure that as a couple, you know, your housing needs are going to be taken care of. You know your options. They're all spelled out transparently and openly in HDB's policies. And, you know, it allows you to really get that house over your head, that roof over your head. It allows you to really settle down with your partner, move on with the rest of your life. Caters to this really genuine need of having a roof over your head.
Yeah. And I know there's always like, people always say that that's not necessarily true because different couples go through different things or different couples think different way. But we are talking about policies here, like a system for the entire nation. And I think realistically and logically, it's kind of impossible to meet the needs of every single couple in Singapore. All the like specific needs that they have.
I think it's also worth pointing out that it's a system, right? It's a system. By and large, it's functioning, churning along. If you think about a couple that's just got together, maybe they met in uni, they are 20-something, and they're planning their future. They know that in 5-10 years' time, there's going to be BTO projects for them to apply for. There's going to be resale flats that they can consider buying, and they know, you know, they can look ahead because that's the way the system has been, and it allows you to really, you know, sit down with your partner and say, you know, this part of our life together sorted. What about everything else?
I think your points point towards it serving a financial need, which is very practical and it makes a lot of sense. But I think it also is looked at from too much of a structural perspective where you view it as the couple's going to come in, sit down, plan their life for the next 5 years. But realistically, that doesn't happen for most humans. It's not necessarily a Singaporean thing. I think it's more just related to how humans experience things. We are dynamic, we change our minds, we have our different experiences as we go along the years too, and plans may change. But this structure locks people in very early and it inhibits you from changing your plans. So when a couple is unable to do that and unable to change their plans, that creates a lot of pressure with them and within them. And in turn, it can actually create friction in the relationship. I do feel like I have seen this come up multiple times based off people sharing online and also based off anecdotes that I've heard of and I've seen happen. I have literally seen messages from cheating spouses messaging their what's it called, like their mistress. I've seen conversations between cheating spouses talking to their mistress saying that they just have to wait out this house thing and that they are stuck in this situation.
That's nuts.
Yes, I've literally seen the message where they are saying, I have to do this for the house. And that is just what I have to do now. It's okay. I love you. I just am in this for the house. And I think it happens a lot more commonly than we would expect. And for us to just ignore that and ignore that this is a real issue that's coming up all the time is to pretend that we are not human at all and that these things are not affecting our lives.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
You should.
Because he doesn't know what else to say.
No, I've got something to say. My dear friends at the table, audience, I present to you two couples to my left.
Getting
We are not a
personal.
couple.
No, you guys are a couple.
We represent two couples.
Two couples,
Yeah.
yes. One that has benefited from the housing system, public housing system. One where the public housing system has met his needs. Rental flat, BTO, newly moved into it. A very nice place, I heard. Congratulations, Nigel. All the
Congrats.
best with that.
We want to be you.
That sounds great. But on the other hand, we have my dear friend Shahinda, who I care a lot about, and I care about her needs. And I think
I need you to keep quiet now.
part of those needs, I think, includes a roof over your head, a place that you and your husband can call home, a place where you guys can build a future, can grow together, can have kids, potentially 2, maybe even 3, who knows.
Very long setup.
I think very hard for you to do that in your current living situation. Is that? Am I right in saying that?
No, you're not.
Oh, yeah.
Nope.
But I mean, many people would find it hard to have kids while living in their mom's house, especially if the walls are not soundproof. But moving on,
Oh my god, bro.
right? You spoke a lot about grants, Shah. Those grants would be useful if you could actually get a BTO, if you could actually get a flat. So without being able to access the public housing system in the first place, those grants don't do anything really. So I don't know. Is it really fair to say that the public housing system has met your needs? I mean, you and your husband have had to decide that we're not gonna to try and get a house now. We're gonna chill and we're gonna try and like take that pressure off us. So even though you really actually did want a house, right?
How do you know?
At least twice you guys really wanted a house, but you couldn't get it. So you've had to change your plans. You've had to decide to do something different. So I think it would be hard to argue that that the public housing system has met your needs. And who knows how many other couples are in your predicament. I'd imagine quite a few. Yeah.
I also do feel like, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
100%. And I think in addition to whatever you were sharing, it really comes down to it becoming and being characterized. The entire BTO system is now characterized as a lottery. And I think when you talk about it as a lottery, it just shows and reflects that it's out of pure luck whether or not you can get a house. And if it's luck, does it really then benefit everyone? Because there's always going to be someone that's unlucky.
There is luck involved. There has to be luck involved. But there are priority schemes where you get way better odds if you're applying to live near your parents. You
Tried multiple times.
And failed. You get more ballot chances.
Yep.
And what the kind of statement from the minister is that if you try for non-mature estates, now they call them standard estates, you're almost guaranteed that you get it on your third try because of the extra ballot chances you get along the way.
I guess that system would then incentivize people to try multiple times, even if they're not prepared for it or if they are not serious about it, just to kind of clock in that attempt. Because the more attempts they get, the better their chances in finalizing a house. And is that something that we want to incentivize? I think it almost would belittle the relationship because it's purely transactional. You're just applying it with your partner so that you can increase your odds of getting a house.
That's a really good point.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first point is that the public housing system puts unnecessary pressure on a relationship. Okay, let's think about the timeline of a flat if you want to get like a BTO, right? You apply today, maybe 6 months later, then you go in to select the flat, and then maybe it's 4 to 5 years. So I think the average now is about 3 years.
4.
That means that you need to think way ahead of time. If you want to have kids, if you want if you want to think about your career and stuff like that, you have to start planning for those things way earlier. Whereas if it wasn't for this system, things could develop a bit more organically. So if let's say you're someone like myself, I'm in my very early 30s, right? You meet someone and then you want to have, if you want to have kids, I'm not saying that I do, but just saying if you want to have kids, you have like, and your partner's a similar age to you. We all know that they have a biological clock. Females have a biological clock. And I guess it becomes more dangerous and harder for people to conceive as they get older. So then you have to start thinking, you still have to start working backwards, right? If let's say you don't want to have kids past the age of 35, then as soon as you meet someone when you're 30, you really got to start locking in that HDB flat. And that, I think, that kind of pressure makes it really hard for an organic, loving relationship to develop, because everything is based around these like timelines, everything's based around these deadlines, filling up these forms. And I feel like that in the long run makes for relationships that are very transactional and very, as Chow was saying earlier, right? Like it's all about the house. It's all about these like material things that are sometimes tied in with your finances, tied in with like a sense of stability. All sorts of pressures that chill guys like me and Chow would prefer for Singaporeans not to have to go through.
I think it also does redefine what marriage and relationships mean. As we had seen earlier, Drew was explaining that he was in a relationship for a year and he decided to apply for his BTO because he does not actually see a lot of value in
No,
marriage.
that's not why we applied for the BTO.
Or the reason why you
I
could,
love her very much. Yes.
But also you saw that you could just marry this person because it's just a change of status. It doesn't actually reflect anything more than that. So marriage is
Tell him.
not important to you as a structure, as a rite of passage, as a stage in your life.
Yeah.
It's not important anymore. And I think it is very much also because you have this pressure to just get married. You don't want to marry this person. There isn't that longing in you that says like, okay, I want to marry this person for the sake of marrying them. And I think it de-romanticizes everything about relationships. I've seen this happen multiple times with many couples also, and a lot of people really just look at marriage now as kind of like a gateway to access public housing and not so much something that they want to celebrate. But marriage used to be something that we celebrated, right? What happened to that?
Maybe if it wasn't so tied into housing, then I would think higher of marriage.
Correct, yeah. I do feel so. And I think it is important to understand how that changes the dynamics of the relationship. I feel like it's very difficult to quantify because it's all about your emotions. But you can, just from the sheer number of people experiencing things that are similar, feeling the pressures of getting married, just for the house, will really reflect how this system is pressuring people and making people decide on their relationships a lot sooner and forcing themselves to fit into boxes that define certain things in their lives. So certain milestones that they have to hit in order to have a proper relationship with their partner.
All right. So to address you guys' point about pressure, right? I think if there's one thing I could say about marriage after having been married for nearly 2 years, it would be that, thank you. It would be that marriage is what you make it. You talk about marriage being de-romanticized because people are just getting married to get housing. I think that's fine. That's really up to them. I think that there is room in the system for couples to genuinely love each other, to genuinely, have really high esteem for marriage and play by the rules of the housing system. You talk about pressure to plan ahead in terms of timelines, waiting for BTOs. But the reality is that BTO is not the only way to get into the housing system. Find a resale flat, the owners are willing to sell, got the right price, you can agree on the right price, you get the grants, you could settle down in your new flat within the span of a year, realistically, including renovation and everything. And I know of couples who, they've dated for a very long time and they've been very stable, but their view on marriage is such that they really want to get married before they start thinking about housing. And so for them, BTO was never in the picture. It was always going to be, let's get really confident in where we are going. Let's actually get married before we start looking at flats. And I know of a couple who have done that. They're getting married next year, March. And they're going to move into their resale flat. So the pressure to plan ahead, the pressure to get on that 6 year timeline, right? Of applying, maybe failing a few times, and then waiting for your BTO. I do believe a lot of that is sometimes self-imposed, or maybe parent imposed, maybe, pressure of your friend group imposed. But I think it's not quite fair to blame it on the housing system just because the housing system has that one track, right? The BTO track, which is available for couples who know what they want and go for it early on. And for everyone else, there's resale, there's sale of balance flat, there's room in the system. It's a big system.
You see, you guys are like precisely the archetype of Singaporeans, right? That I wish I could be, because I wish I could have been in a relationship for a long time too, and I wish it worked out. But I feel like not everyone is lucky enough to experience that. I think everyone has different journeys, as we should. And I always look back at people who have been with their partners since like their early 20s, right? And I'm just like, you guys are so lucky because you guys could plan so far ahead. But for somebody that is now in my late 20s and still single, right? It's a bit scary to think that I have pretty much lost out in a very practical way, lost out to all the potential capital gains that could have come from an HDB flat if I had decided so early on. I think that is also just the structure of the BTO, structure of HDB in general has tweaked our perceptions. So perhaps it may not be the sole reason for forcing us to think this way. And there are many, many different reasons, but it definitely is one of the reasons that has now made us look at HDBs in a very practical way. It's just, now it's truly a instrument for investments and for making a big flip on a house. And like it or not, I feel like that's how majority of Singaporeans feel. Why do we even apply so early on? Because the earlier you apply, the more money you'll be able to gain from the property market when you flip eventually. And this is an opinion that resonates with so many people. And you could just speak to any property agent. That's exactly what they'll tell you too. You can buy early now. And your parents will tell you the same thing. And all of it is also still because of how the structure is built. If it wasn't for that structure, then we wouldn't be encouraged to be settling down early for the sake of a house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because you pointed about you talked about the different pressures. It's not just the housing system, right?
Yeah.
But you got to imagine that influences everyone else's, everyone else who's telling you should get married and get a house early. Like that, knowing that you exist in this context, like influences all those other people to give you that kind of advice as well.
Yeah. I guess you could kind of look at it from the perspective of different societies where maybe marriage is not tied to public housing or home ownership. So I'm going to look at HDB broadly as just home ownership. So if marriage is not tied to that, then they have a lot more openness in the way that they live. If something doesn't work out, it's okay. They can still keep their home, and it doesn't hinge on them being a married couple.
How do couples keep their home if their relationship doesn't work out?
I think, say for example, a BTO, if you realize that you're not gonna be with this person, you have to forfeit it. If you haven't had if you have not done your ROM, but I bought a resale flat, I just didn't do the ROM yet, I also have to forfeit my HDB.
Yeah.
But you're asking like overseas,
because
right?
you're saying elsewhere.
Yeah,
right?
so
if the relationship doesn't work out, you still keep your house.
Yeah, presumably you would buy the other person out, and then you could continue to live in that house, right?
But how is that better?
What do you mean?
How does that
At least
serve
you have
the
a
greater
house.
good?
At least you have a house.
I mean, that's not necessarily
One person
for the
has the
greater
house.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that, at least the couple doesn't have to stay together for the sake of the house, right?
Correct, yeah. Because now a lot of people are doing that and living, so many couples also just stay in the same house, but they are staying in different rooms, for example. Like they're not happy in their relationships, but they stay on to keep the house.
Yeah.
But is that the housing system's fault though?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Well, it is because the housing system means that you have to be married to continue to stay in that house, right? Otherwise, you have to give it up.
Yeah.
But then wouldn't that be our flawed perception of marriage? And also the society's mindset of what marriage is? If you say that the public housing system de-romanticizes marriage, is that actually true, or is that just our own mindset and perception of what that system does to our understanding of marriage?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of words, but I think you guys get what I mean.
It's the fact that people's attitudes on marriage are shifting, right? And housing is just the theater where we see that playing out. It's that
Yeah.
people already don't see marriage as the way that they used to. They think it's perfectly fine for you to be legally married, just stay in different rooms of the house just to keep the house. And I would bet that happens loads in other countries where they don't have MOP as well. We've all watched movies and TV about people who stay married because of the kids. Is that a problem with the fertility system? It's a problem with people's perception of what it means to be married and stay married for what a lot of others would say are the wrong reasons.
I guess the difference with staying together for kids as opposed to staying together for your house, right, is that's a personal choice. You are making a choice to have kids. It's not determined by like some larger law or policy that is being imposed on you, right? But literally you have to stay together if you want to keep a house. A married couple could choose to get divorced even if they have kids.
Yep.
Right? Like, as in that doesn't change. Like, there's no law.
You'll still keep your
determining
kids.
that. Yeah, exactly.
You'll still have
The
your
government's
kids.
not going to take away your kids.
If you get
Right,
divorced, you don't have to stay in the same house.
Sorry?
If you get divorced, you don't have to stay in the same house.
Even after MOP? Sorry. Even before MOP, you would have to give up that house.
You
Yeah.
will have
Yeah,
to forfeit
you have to
because you
forfeit
no
the
longer
house.
have a marriage certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've
So
just
what are you saying, bro?
What are you saying? What are you saying?
Wait, you're saying that divorce, you literally said divorced couples will then have to stay in the house together. Even though they don't want
when
to.
did I say that?
Like just
I think
now?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
like
they're
couples who
pressured to
don't
stay.
love each other
Oh,
are
okay,
pressured to
couples-
stay together. Yeah.
pressure
Yeah,
to stay in a
extend.
relationship.
To keep the house.
I would say that they have the option of splitting up and surrendering the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
It's a choice.
it is
Yeah.
a
Yes,
choice.
yeah.
I mean, it boils down to personal choice. And yes, the answer, of course, is not easy. Both sides suck. Like, either you stay together, hate each other for the sake of the house, or you split out and then suffer a lot of emotional and financial losses, right? But again, what we are arguing about today is the public housing system in general. And all these are actually personal choices, like more towards individual choices, right? As compared to the entire system itself.
I agree. I also recognize that the system and the structure does have a responsibility in influencing the way people think and our perceptions on
Yeah,
how
that's a good
we
one.
live in our lives, right? How we choose to build our lives in the society that we are living in, because we have to live by the rules here.
Yep.
And that really shapes our perception of things. I think very early on in my life, I probably was 19 or 18 when I first started hearing of people talking about BTOing already. And I think back then to me it was really wild. Like, why would I get married to someone that for this house, right? How would I know who I want to marry? I haven't even graduated. It's just all these really big life decisions that you have to make so early on because of the structure. And sure, maybe it's people talking about these things, but why are the people even talking about that and creating the pressure? Because the structure is in place.
I mean, I think it's a good point about the system having a responsibility, right? Because the way that the rules are shape the way that we think
Correct,
about
yeah.
certain key things like housing.
Thank
But
you.
I agree.
I
with that.
agree.
Okay, let's move
But
on.
there are primary and secondary responsibilities. And I think the primary responsibility of the housing system is how do we get everybody housed? And I think that's the first and the most important thing that it tries to go about achieving. And you think about the hierarchy of needs, right? You need to have shelter over your head, food, Wi-Fi, and then
Wow, okay.
those are the first few
Yeah,
things you
yeah,
think about,
correct.
right? But the higher level stuff like, oh, do you have the right perspective on love and relationships? That's a secondary thing. And I think, our argument would be the housing system, it really takes care of that primary responsibility, making sure everybody can afford a house, can access a house. The house is going to be of a livable standard. And then on top of that, yes, it does have a secondary responsibility to shape the way that we think about things. And I think there's been movement in that direction as well. Okay, we just think about some of the recent policy changes that kicked in from just last month.
This year.
Yeah,
Really this
just
year.
last month. The Prime Plus standard model, right? The direction of that is nudging people to think of HDB as a home and not as an investment. And the whole thrust of that policy is to tell people, don't think that you can buy a house and easily flip it for financial gain, because you're going to be locked in for 10 years. You're going to have resale restrictions after those 10 years. And I think the fact that people are signing up for some of these plus and prime projects, it really shows that, like what Syah said, they've thought about it long term. They've made those big decisions with their partner and, signed away the next 10 years of their life. So I think there's movement, right, towards fulfilling that secondary objective as well. But we have to remember that the primary purpose of the housing system is for us to be housed.
Yep, that's true. I mean, I don't want to repeat it, but I have to say, honestly, I feel like marriage is a lot more complex and important as compared to housing. Like, after getting married, I kind of realized that the marriage itself is more important to look after and to like actually sit down and talk to with your partner as compared to these practical things like housing. Yes, it's important, and I understand that not many people have that privilege or luxury of time to actually sit down and talk about, do we need a house, stuff like that. But again, it boils down to the individual and the couple's needs on their own. It's something that they have to journey ahead together, and that's what the system is all about.
Yeah.
Can I come back to you on your point? So you mentioned like the hierarchy of needs, right? And I think that it's a good point and probably well argued that HDB definitely does fulfill like that basic need of like providing a roof over whoever needs its head, right?
And Wi-Fi.
And Wi-Fi, yeah. And then you said like the secondary thing about like love and relationships, that's, not necessarily the the priority for HDB. So but for a couple, it could be argued that like thinking about the relationship and like love and those kind of things, that's super important for a couple. So that means that HDB's priorities do not necessarily match up with what the priority for a young couple working out their relationship should be, right? And
but wouldn't that mean
that the public housing system isn't necessarily for the greater good of couples? It's just for the greater good of providing like basic necessities.
If we were to take that hypothesis and the public housing system actually focuses on the emotional, psychological aspects of couples, we flip it around, how would that
Well, I'm not saying that it has to, but we're just arguing whether it does or it is for the greater good or it isn't for the greter good. Right? And I think that the argument I'm making is that the way that it's set up now, whilst it might provide like shelter, while it does meet basic necessities, it excludes what might be the greater good of couples.
Yeah. Like that's something that we have been trying to talk about also. Like it really is coming down to what you think is better for the couple, right? What is really greater? Is it really just a shelter or is it the quality of the relationship? So when you really deep dive into how the relationship can feel better, is it really just the house? Not so much. Like your relationship is great, but you don't have a BTO yet.
And we're doing great.
Doing amazing. I'm so happy for that.
In spite of the public housing system, some might argue.
Look, I have to be really honest. Like I was very against the public housing system because of my experiences. And even before we even applied for BTO, I already kind of had a lot of like grudges against public housing system because of what I've seen my friends go through. I had someone very, very dear to me who suffered from the BTO system because she got a BTO and then the dude cheated on her and like so it's a whole lot of crap basically. So because of all these things I see on the ground and like people dear to me experiencing all that, I used to have this grudge against the public housing system. But then having gone through it myself, I kind of realized that yes, it's not perfect. It's never ever going to meet the needs of every single couple or every single specific issues or needs that you have. But what it does essentially as a policy, as a system in general is actually enough. Because other than that, you have to go through it yourself. We don't expect the system to hand carry us through everything and through every journey of our life and to help us make decisions on, for example, what marriage means. We can't let that be. We can't basically surrender what marriage means to the public housing system. If that's what you do and if that's what you and your partner think, then I think there's some flawed thinking there that you guys have to like sit down and reflect on.
Yeah, I think if I could try to sum it up, I would say that marriage, love, and relationships are way bigger than just housing. And if you arrange your relationship around the housing system, maybe the problem isn't the housing system, but it's how you've arranged your relationship.
Right. So I guess when it comes to looking at the greater good for couples, it does seem to benefit practical reasons for heterosexual couples. But the system then, of course, discriminates against a lot of non-traditional couples.
Yeah.
Like your homosexuals.
Why did you say
You
like
look
that?
right like
You're a gay couple. Yes, I mean, me and Chow are great, big fans of diversity, I would say, right? Like,
yeah,
and inclusion. And I believe that you guys are too. You know, I believe you guys are big supporters of
I'm the
diversity.
poster
and
for
inclusion.
diversity in Mothership.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. You can include that.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, who doesn't like diversity? Ignorant people. Unfortunately, right now, the public housing system does exclude anything except for trad couples, I think, as Chow said. You have to be married, or if not, you have to be over the age of 35. I think if you have kids, maybe there's a provision for that as well, if you're single and you have kids. But regardless, I think broadly, you know, if you're not a heterosexual married couple, you are kind of excluded from this party, from this deal. And I think, like, you know, society has changed quite a bit, and people have different, you know, as you've seen in this episode, people might have different ideas about marriage or its importance. People might have different ideas about love as well, right? Like, why can't two best friends be a couple? As I think someone wiser than me once asked. Yeah, and these people can't get a house through the BTO or the resale system. I think that's kind of sad. I feel like that's a less diverse society. That's just building like public housing blocks full of heterosexual couples. But
It's
how
true,
about
though.
the gays and stuff like that?
You know, there's one reason why HDB flats are full of heterosexual couples, and that's simply the fact that Singapore is full of heterosexual couples. So,
Ooh, broad statement.
I mean, the majority of
just let him
couples,
talk.
the majority of couples in
Statistically,
Singapore
yes.
are heterosexual.
Okay.
And the housing system, the public housing system, caters to the public. It caters to the broadest coverage possible. Should it be more inclusive? I think there's an argument that can be made for it. Is it becoming more inclusive? I think the answer is definitely yes. So we have to look at the movement in the system over time as Singapore society matures and grows as well. I think it was not too recently that we abolished Section 377A. I think that's a good step for Singapore society, and it helps everybody move together towards more inclusiveness. And I think that the public housing system will follow in that direction, but we have to give it time.
So what you're saying is, as it is right now, though, it may not be for the greater good of all couples.
Okay,
Just
but
heterosexual ones.
It's for the greater good of most couples.
Most couples, not
Okay.
all. And
just
then
to,
some
just
some
to add
notable
on to that,
exclusions.
actually. So when we talk about non-traditional couples, right? Okay, when you talk about homosexual couples, it's not that they are entirely included from the public housing system. Yes, our laws cannot be immediately like out in the open, like here's a grant for gays or something like that. But there are some schemes that, you guys know what I mean, right? There are some schemes that actually like non-traditional couples can go through. For example, the single scheme. So those who are above 35 can go and buy a house. And there's also the option for more than one single to buy a house together.
But
And
both
there's-
have to be above 35, right?
Yes, both have
Yeah.
to be above 35. And yes, there is that pain of, okay, you have to wait until you're 35. But again, there are still options. It's not entirely excluding non-traditional couples, right? And of course, like you said, if a child is involved in any way, then there are more priorities that can be given to these non-traditional couples.
Well, public housing wise, what are your options if you are gay in a relationship and under the age of 35?
Well, then unfortunately, you can't get a
Yeah,
house.
so there are no options for
but
those
you
people.
can rent.
The option is wait till 35.
You can wait till 35 or you can rent.
Kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, but again, these things, right, the public housing system, it cannot exist like exclusively on its own. Of course, like in Singapore, there are also other laws that we have to adhere to. And when we talk about homosexuality in general, the laws are still perhaps not as fully developed or advanced as other countries. But we are, like Nigel said, our society is slowly moving and growing and pivoting towards a more inclusive and diverse mindset.
Yeah.
So
I think
perhaps down the line, there'll probably be more policy shifts. We never know.
So our next point, the HDB system encourages couples to stay and work out their problems. I'm not the one who came up with this point, but I'm arguing
Wow,
it
disavowing it
anyway.
already. Okay, go on.
Okay, so we all know there's an MOP, right?
Yeah.
You buy a
Yes.
flat, you have to stay there for 5 years before
10 years
you
for
can.
some.
10 years for
Yes.
some, yes. 5 to or 10 years before you can sell it. And I think what that does is that it locks you in a way that helps you as a couple to stay together, work out your problems, rather than giving you an easy solution of just ending things as and when you feel like.
Damn, Nigel. I'm gonna take it from here. He was sounding more and more like
Like it's
unsure.
a gun to his head.
Go for it,
So
Shah.
this was your idea,
Okay.
Shah?
No, not
okay.
necessarily. But okay, I understand this point greatly, okay? And throughout this debate, actually, there's one phrase that I think you guys might have heard a lot that is locking in. And there's a lot of negativity surrounding this phrase, and I would like to flip it over to the positive side. Because I think, again, the whole argument from our team, actually, right, the main thing is it's in the individual's own choices and their own perceptions, right? So the housing system, the public housing system is already there, the law's already there, and because of the MOP periods for BTOs, some 10 years, most 5 years, because of this, couples are then strongly encouraged to, for example, if they have any issues, if they have like any like trials and tribulations, like just you have to understand that you have made a huge commitment. And because of this decision, this is something that you guys have to go through together. And this essentially, it boils down to our main two arguments previously, which is couples have to sit down and talk. And that's what we want from all couples, right? Like for them to actually reflect and not think so shallowly about certain things like marriage and finances and housing, of course. Because once you commit to that house, then it's like it's probably one of the biggest thing you have to do as a couple on top of marriage, of course. Marriage is the first. I would always argue that marriage is the main important thing you go through as a couple, and then it's all these other practical things like housing, finances, and all that. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Shah. That's a
Yeah.
lot better articulated.
Okay, our last point for today, for the against, is that the public housing system currently creates an artificial or a false demand for what is already limited resources. So we talked about the planning ahead thing, right? Like sometimes people are just not ready to make that decision, or not financially ready to make that decision, not in a place in life where they should be making that decision. But because they want to plan ahead, because they feel like they have this deadline that they want to meet, they just apply anyways. That's one source of demand, I think, that is false and wouldn't be there if it wasn't for our current system. The other source of demand, I think, is people just trying their luck because it's a lottery. So you don't expect to get it, maybe. You don't think like you are going to get it. You just think like, okay, I need to just apply just to see. It's a lottery. Maybe I won't get it. Maybe I have to rack up those chances of failed attempts before I get my flat. So I think this makes it harder for everyone involved because, the queue numbers are way higher. People like Shah find it tough to get their flats. The prices go up as well because demand is higher, and that makes it harder for people to afford their flats. If you are a couple that really needs a house and you failed multiple times because demand is too high, then you're forced into like the resale market maybe, and that we know has been quite expensive, especially recently. I mean, you always see the headlines about flats that are going above a certain unnamed amount.
Seven-figure
amount, yeah. But yes, I mean, this makes it harder for everyone, not just couples. I mean, and especially for the couples that really need it. Do you have anything to add on that?
I think you nailed it, honestly.
Thanks for the support.
Like, that was great.
It was from our
Yeah.
prior discussion.
Well, I mean,
Nothing to rebut. Okay, let's move on.
Nigel has something
I think
to
what
say.
we can say about that is how do you judge whether demand is real or artificial, right? If people are putting in an application, it means we assume that they are prepared for what that application may lead them to. We assume that they have thought it through. We hope that they would have thought it through. HDB can do everything it can to be really upfront about the consequences. Okay, this is a big decision. You put down a deposit. You kind of understand that if you put down a deposit and then you back out the deal, that you could lose that amount that you've put down. So if people have gone to that state, to that stage actually, if people have gone to that stage of putting down a deposit, making a decision, putting in their applications, how can we say that their demand is artificial? Just because we know anecdotally of people who changed their minds along the way. At the point that they applied, the demand is real. They really wanted the house. They really wanted a place to stay. I think that's fair to say for Syah's first application, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It is.
Even the
It's
second
true.
application, yeah.
I mean, yes, when I was like telling my story, my personal story, yes, looking back in hindsight, my perception was like a bit not as mature as it is now, but that demand was still real.
Yep.
Yeah. And also, if you just look at stats and the numbers on its own, like my very first time applying for BTO, I got a queue number that was like way more than the number of flats. So how can we actually tell if all these numbers, the demands, there are some artificial ones? Demand is already there. We can never like dispute that. Demand will always be there. We all know that. For every BTO exercise, demand is like high.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I guess we can look at the number of people who actually did apply for their flats after getting their queue numbers. And article was 2023. So just last year, there was data released that 40% of HDB BTO applicants did not book a flat when they were invited to do so. And that's almost half of
Yeah.
the people. So does that really reflect that there's true demand, that people actually really needed a house at the point of application?
Yeah.
Were
So I
there
think
were there like reasons given for why these people rejected? I think it's important to lay down the
Yeah.
reasons because
Yes.
hold on, because the MND, Ministry of National Development, once replied to a parliamentary question on this exact issue, like how many successful applicants actually rejected, and after being invited to choose a flat, they did not. And yes, there are numbers. Okay, from 2010 to 2019, on average, about 2,300 BTO flat applicants cancelled their flat bookings each year. So these numbers are real. That's true, and we concede to that. However, there's a variety of reasons as to why these cancellations happen. Some of it could be because they broke up. Okay, the couples break up. However, there are also other reasons that were provided, such as a change of housing plan, or some people facing financial difficulties that they did not expect when they first applied for that BTO. So again, like the reasons for it are varied. It's not necessarily because the demand wasn't real at the time. It could be a case scenario, right? Okay, I applied for BTO, everything was planned perfectly well. Me and my partner was solid, everything great. And then suddenly, once we got accepted we were invited to choose a flat. Suddenly, who knows? Okay, someone close to us got sick. Then we need to focus our finances on that. And we have to sacrifice our BTO. So these type of cases or scenarios do happen as well. So it doesn't necessarily reflect that false demand.
Yeah, but 40% is still a massive number.
Yes,
as
it
in,
is true.
So a
No,
large
like-
chunk of those people presumably are people who did not like absolutely need a house.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it can't be purely coincidental that we hear of anecdotes of
Yeah.
people saying, I just apply for fun lah, just here. I just apply for fun because like, why not? It
Yeah.
can't be a coincidence that we have this data and people saying this.
Yeah.
No,
And I
that's
think-
that's true. Actually, like we concede to that. But all these people who are so-called playing the system, then they will have to face the repercussions.
Yeah.
Because there are repercussions to not choosing flats even after you are invited.
And on that note, they've actually tightened the penalties as of
Yeah.
last year. So they
Yeah.
made it such that if you are a first-time buyer who's got a non-selection of your flat, you will be considered as a second-time buyer. So you lose your priority for a year.
Yeah.
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 So that's an acknowledgement that like it was a problem at the very
Yes,
least, right, before they
yes.
introduced these measures.
I think the response to 40% non-selection is that they give out 300% queue numbers, right? So even if you have 40% non-selection, it's going to be 100% of the flats that are taken up. So is that really a problem, that people aren't selecting the BTOs when they're offered? When actually, their non-selection doesn't really have a real impact on the people who wanted the flat. It's not that the flats are being left vacant for any period of time because they haven't even been built yet. And I think that's, in a sense, a feature of the BTO system, that it arranges the demand in that way. It allocates the flats. And that's the system that we have to arrange, who gets the flat and when.
I think the problem that I would have with that is that, I think that's what you said is a good point, but it does create like a overall like atmosphere and environment where people feel like, oh, the demand for this is so high. I better
get in the queue early.
Get in the queue.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, try my luck and things like that. And that just adds to the problem, right? It becomes like a vicious cycle. Like people feel the pressure that they have to apply because they're missing out because everyone else is applying, or because there's so many people applying. I need to get like my chances in or whatever. Which just makes it harder for everyone overall.
Right,
especially for the people who really need it.
Yeah. And I guess if we're going back to the main statement about whether or not it's greater for couples, I think when it comes to couples who are very sincere about wanting to settle down, get a house, and they want to just move on with their lives, put a roof over their heads, and maybe start a family, then these are just additional roadblockers that would prevent them from being able to attain that.
Yeah. Seeing like the amount of the oversubscription can be quite disheartening as well, I'm sure.
And it's stressful and taxing, right?
Yes, it is. Right. Everyone is using me as an example.
I mean, you did hear her talk about how it was a very taxing time for her.
Yeah, that brings us to our closing statement.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So in closing, our point of view is that the housing system encourages couples to think long term. It meets their genuine need. It doesn't put pressure on them to commit to something that they may not be prepared for. And that's just because at the end of the day, marriage is the biggest decision in a relationship, way bigger than housing. And just to restate what I've already said before, if you are arranging a relationship around the housing system, and that's giving you problems, perhaps the issue isn't the housing system, but the way that you've arranged your relationship.
Sorry, I just want to add on.
Whoa, that's
closing statement part two?
Yeah. I just want to wrap it up because
You want to wrap up?
when I was watching your video, right, I was looking through the comments also. There was this one comment, I even wrote it down because I thought it was quite
Struck
important.
her.
So this person said, to some, buying a house can be a common goal, target, commitment to work together. And for those same exact reasons, it could also tear two people apart. And this comment, I think, is really good because, again, that's the whole point of our argument. It boils down to the couple and the individual's choice. It's not the responsibility of the public housing system.
We can see that it doesn't all just hinge on the public housing system. But I think going back to what we talked about earlier, that just by the nature of us living in this system, we are influenced by the environment that it creates, the way that people think, the way that the generations before us thought about public housing already and have been encouraging and talking about this and making it almost a part of our culture and the Singaporean life to be able to buy a HDB flat at an early age. And these are undeniably pressures. When you think of Singapore life, you think you need to have this HDB. So that is a pressure in itself. It's so ingrained in the narrative of being a Singaporean. And it's undeniable that this structure and the system has influenced that. And I do feel like it has created an idea that couples have to be a certain way. Couples must be able to hit certain milestones together. And when you are not doing that, you may feel a little bit separated from society, from the norms, and it may outcast you even. So at the end of the day, we do think that there is a pressure.
Yeah.
Undeniably. And if you do feel like you have that pressure and you're experiencing it for yourself, if you're experiencing it for yourself, then you're really not alone in that. It really is something that many people experience too. And I don't think that we should continue pretending that it doesn't exist.
And to add on, I mean, let's not forget our good friends in non-traditional relationships that have been excluded from the public housing system as it is right now, or at least the BTO system. Okay, I think that's it for the debate. Now is the time to say real. So this is a section of our podcast where we get to throw off
Everybody breathe.
the sides of a for and against and say what we really think about this topic.
Yeah.
Maybe I can start off with a question. Would you guys do something, looking back now at your own like journey in the public housing system, would you do anything different?
No.
Maybe Nigel.
It's a no for Nigel.
No for Nigel.
Yes.
Like, do you feel like you could have had like better, more serious conversations about it at the start? How did you go into it?
How do we go into it? I remember sitting down with my wife and her parents, and we were sharing with them, we've put in an application for BTO. If I think back to my mental state at that point in time, actually we had no idea what we were getting into. But I think that's marriage. At the point where we got married, could we say that we knew what we were getting into? I don't think so either. And I think the mystery of love and relationships is how do you commit to someone for your lifetime,
Yep.
knowing that you can't know what the future will bring.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
think
this is say real, right?
Yeah.
So we can just now when you were talking about
Yeah.
marriage and everything and how, what is it?
marriage is what you make of it.
Marriage is what you
Yeah.
like 100% agree. I think whether someone wants to cheat or not, right? It's going to happen whether or not you have a house. Like that's just what it is.
Yeah.
If someone is not good for you, if the relationship is not meant to work out, then it's going to happen regardless of the house. I think where we were coming from is really just that the house creates this additional layer of stress.
Yeah.
As it would anywhere else lah,
Yeah.
honestly.
One of the things that, to come back on what you guys were saying earlier, right? A lot of it was marriage is the most important thing in a relationship, not the house. And I think that makes sense in so far as like your relationship is the most important thing in your relationship, right? Like how you and your partner feel about each other, how you solve problems, how you go through life together. That definitely is the most important thing. But like, man, housing is one of those things that has the potential to cause you like long-term like pain in terms of like finances if you stuff that up. And one of the things that really struck me about your video was when you showed your like CPF.
Oh yeah.
It was like
the
76
balance.
cents or something like that in it.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Broke. Nobody believed me. But like there was like no money in my CPF.
Yeah.
Because I had to pay back all the grants and whatnot, so it was wiped clean. Back to public housing in general, I do feel that we have an excellent system in Singapore. It really is something that serves majority of people. Are there loopholes? 100% yes. But like you guys mentioned, it can't serve everyone's needs. You know, there's just too much diversity in like everybody's requirements and what we can do. You know, and I think if you want our society to function at a level that is productive and that is sustainable, we're doing a pretty good job. It's been this way for like how many years now? I think globally, everybody looks at the Singapore public housing system as something to admire and to aspire for, you know?
Yeah.
And there's nowhere else in the world where you can get housing. There's no comparable city in the world where you can get housing at this price.
I think the thing to remember about the system is that it's not fixed. There have been a lot of policy changes along the way. And I think the crux of the disagreement that kind of came to mind as we were talking, I was talking about, but look at this policy change, look at this, we're moving in the right direction. Maybe the crux of the issue is, are we moving fast enough? That's the thing that, especially if you're outside the system, especially if you're on the fringes, if you're an exceptional case, you might feel, isn't it about time I could buy a house with my best friend?
There was this argument that the BTO system in general wasn't fully revised or looked into again for quite a while as compared to other systems or laws in Singapore.
I see.
Yeah, so it's one that we, like we said, it's a matter of like how fast we are moving or how slow we are moving. I think that is the main question, not the system itself. I think its foundation is already quite solid in my opinion.
No, I think there's a lot to be said about how the system could be better. I really do take Chow's point that, the system has a responsibility to shape the way that we think. I think that's so real because I can just remember a story of a friend who she'd been dating this guy and they put in a BTO application. And I remember telling her, congrats, you've got to the next stage in your relationship. And she said, no, actually don't say that to me because I didn't realize that I have cold feet the moment we put in the application.
Oh no.
And she actually was in that paradoxical situation of hoping that they wouldn't get the BTO. Because if that really went through, it means that, suddenly she has to make that decision and she's not prepared to do so. And that's exactly the kind of mindset and mentality that I think you were talking about, right? That people feel they have to put in the application because you got to get in the queue. And I can see that's really unhelpful for some people.
Yeah.
The other thing to be said is, we argued that the system encourages couples to think long term. I actually see that there could be points made in the other direction as well. Because the system,
it makes couples think short term?
It makes couples not think because it's such a no-brainer. It's such a no-brainer. You BTO, you get the flat, you sell it for, I don't know, sometimes 50, 60% appreciation, right? And I think, they're trying to manage that. They're trying to make it less of a windfall.
Yeah.
But that's still going to be the case, I think, for the next couple of years. That, you know, it will be the no-brainer option. If you have a partner, you're eligible, go for it before you exceed the income ceiling. You know, lock in your grants, and it actually encourages you to, you know, not think so much about what happens after, what happens if we don't work out. So I think, it does encourage you to think long term, but it also encourages you to, hey, this is really a good option, you know. And I do see that people do face that kind of pressure.
How you said that you think it's good, right? You think
I
the public
do.
housing system
I
is
feel
good?
like it does serve majority of people in Singapore, and that's really the objective of the system. So it has met its objective. Didn't serve me, but that's okay. I'm not the most important person. That's a fact. Like, I really am not that important. So I think as long as it's
what the hell?
it's just facts. Like
The most important person at this table.
No, that's not true.
That's our special guest.
Definitely more important than Drew.
But I do feel like it still serves people very well, and that they are constantly tweaking it anyway. Maybe not at the pace that everybody's happy with. So just chill, man. Just be chill guys like us.
A chill guy. When
just
the
be
public
chill
housing
guys,
system doesn't serve your needs, but you're a chill guy.
But I'm a chill guy, so you know what? I still think that the system is great.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's episode. As usual, we've put up a poll on our YouTube community page, and I feel like I have to remind our viewers every single episode. You're not voting for the argument that you like the best. You're voting for the argument that was the best presented. So it's not a popularity contest. It's not about which one you agree with the most. It's about who was the best debater. And that's super important. So you guys should head over to our community page and let us know who you vote for over there.
Yep, and you guys know the drill. The speaker with the most points at the end of season 2 will be crowned master debater and receive the grand honor of having their face planted on our leaderboard right there. Yeah, so please vote wisely.
Just another gentle reminder as well, the views expressed in this podcast do not represent the views of Mothership or other associated parties.
Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can leave us a rating. That would be awesome.
Finally, just a big thank you to Audio-Technica for powering the audio for this podcast.
All right, thank you everybody for tuning in, and of course, thank you Chow for being here today.
Thank you guys
for being our guest today. Yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Whoa. That's my radio sign off.
Oh, really?
Ciao.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Nice.